This screencast is going to start where we left off with the homework screencast. So we're going to start with the Little Rock 9. That Supreme Court decision paved the way to allow African Americans to be able to attend all white schools. And this is going to kind of happen at different rates and different paces across the country. But in Little Rock, Arkansas, the superintendent of the school board kind of came up with a plan to gradually integrate schools by enrolling African Americans in groups at a time to kind of make it a gradual change for the school setting. And so at Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, they are going to start by enrolling 9 African American students. And these 9 students will become known as the Little Rock 9. So on the day that the 9 students were supposed to start classes at Central High, the governor of Arkansas actually sent the National Guard troops to block the entrance to the school. So the governor of the state is instructing the Arkansas National Guard not to let the students in, and at the same time there's a very angry mob of students, like white students and white parents who are protesting this integration. They're, greeting the students in a very antagonizing and malicious way. Elizabeth Eckford is one of the members of the Little Rock 9, and she's actually pictured on the screen as walking away from a very angry girl. She is quoted as saying, in terms of what she heard as she was approaching the school, somebody started yelling, "Lynch her, lynch her." I tried to see a friendly face somewhere in the crowd, someone who maybe could help. I looked into the face of an old woman, and it seemed a kind face, but when I looked at her again, she spat on me. And so this just shows you again kind of the ignorance that's existing at this time. But all of this is kind of being recorded by local and national media sources, so the president learns about this. He and others are, of course, upset, and the governor is ordered by the president to kind of disband the National Guard and allow the students to enter the school. The Little Rock police were instructed to guard the front door against the mob of angry white segregationists. Again, that angry mob of both parents and students. And they were supposed to allow the students to kind of enter secretly through the back door, but the angry mob heard the students were inside, and so they began to riot, and so for the second time the students were not allowed to enter. So the mayor of Little Rock basically turns to President Eisenhower and says, if we're going to do this, we're going to need more support, and we need your help. And so Eisenhower actually sends a division of the U.S. Army and places the Arkansas National Guard under federal command, taking control of it himself. And finally, by the third attempt, with the protection of both the Army and the National Guard, the 9 students were able to enter the school. They received very harsh treatment while they were there. Often were they attacked and abused, like during the school day. You could imagine the bravery of these individuals. Also, one will eventually transfer out, I think actually a couple of them, and eventually the school closes temporarily to prevent the integration, and it will reopen later on when things calm down a little. But these 9 individuals were extremely brave. I actually had the privilege of meeting one at a history teachers conference a couple years ago, and I'll try to remember to show y'all the picture in class tomorrow. Alright, we're now going to pick up with civil rights under President John Kennedy, which you don't see in your outline, so you need to go to the email I sent you and copy and paste that outline into alright, copy and paste it to the bottom of yours. Okay, so we're going to first formation of a new Civil Rights Committee called SNCC, and SNCC stands for Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. It was initially headed by Ella Baker, who was actually an older woman, even though the majority of the club, or I'm sorry, not the club, but the majority of the committee was made of students, college students. But SNCC was an interracial organization made up of mostly college students that were famous for holding sit-ins. Now, a sit-in would be where you would go into a place where you were illegally not, not allowed to be. So legally not allowed to be. It's illegal for you to be there, and you would refuse to leave. You would not really speak. You would not act aggressively at all. You would just simply, it's a form of peaceful protest, and often this is met with a lot of violence from both police forces and segregationists, which again refer to those kind of violent mobs. And these protesters will often be arrested for civil disobedience. One of the most famous instances was at the Woolworth lunch counter. And that's where this picture actually came from on the screen. And what would happen is, the media is taking these pictures of these African American and these other college students peacefully protesting. They're made to look the victim, and the antagonists and the segregationists are made to look like the attackers. We're going to transition to talking about Birmingham. So, Birmingham, Alabama was the most segregated city in the South at this time, highly dangerous for African Americans. The KKK pretty much had kind of a reign of terror over the city, as they claimed to have several members in high positions in the government, whether that be the mayor or the governor, we don't really know, but definitely ties in the government in Alabama and in Birmingham especially to the KKK. The police chief was Bull Connor. He was in charge of an all-white police force, and he was known to use the police department very aggressively to oppress the African American community. He instructed police forces to beat marchers with their batons. He would often also release police dogs on any kind of marcher, and these dogs would bite. He would even go as far as to use the fire department. He would allow the fire department to use the fire hoses that are very strong. The water pressure in a fire hose from the fire department can strip bark off a tree, and he would use fire hoses to push people back. Now, he doesn't hold a candle to the governor of Alabama at the time, one Mr. George Wallace. And George Wallace is an avid segregationist. He had done everything he could possible to kind of halt the integration of schools. He wanted to stop integration by all means necessary. I encourage you to now pause the screencast and go watch the link I've attached to the email, because it's a little less than 2-minute clip of one of Wallace's more famous speeches. Now, the date, April 1962, was one that was a bit more dangerous, or not dangerous, but active for this movement, because Martin Luther King actually got involved with a few civil rights groups in Birmingham, Alabama, trying to protest, trying to enact civil disobedience. So he began kind of this large series of marches and sit-ins in the month of April. And, of course, Bull Connor comes out with the fire hoses and the police dogs. And this creates a lot of media attention, which makes the segregationists and the police force in Alabama look to be oppressive and incompetent. And because Alabama doesn't want to look bad, a judge in Birmingham actually orders that there will be no more marches or any sort of public protests for a while, which, by the way, is a violation of your amendment rights, but we'll save that for another day. So with this new law being or this new rule being applied, King has a decision to make, and he's actually, for the first time ever, personally going to break the law himself in order to go to jail and make a statement. And he will be arrested at this time. So you may have heard that King spent time in jail, where he wrote some of his more famous works, such as Letter from a Birmingham Jail. This is when that happens. The 16th Street Baptist Church was an all-black church in Birmingham. It was a common sight to see all-black church communities be the victims, or be the site of a bomb attack. In fact, Birmingham was at times referred to as Bombingham. So this takes place in the year following King's arrest. On September 15th, 1963, police estimate that at least 15 sticks of dynamite were used to blow up the 16th Street Baptist Church. This church at the time was filled with probably close to 400 Americans, African Americans, and at least 80, close to 100 were children. The blast seriously injured at least 20 people and did kill 4 young girls. A member of the KKK that was responsible for the bombing was arrested for having dynamite without a permit. He was found not guilty of any type of murder charge, and he received a $100 fine and 6 months in jail for having the dynamite, even though 4 girls were killed. And that was justice in Birmingham. This is the 1960s. I mean, this is just so incredibly hard to believe. So the African American community began to call on the help of MLK again because of his work in the community. And so he's still in jail, but he's going to organize something that's going to become known as the Children's March. And this is the last thing that we're going to talk about that will go towards your quiz tomorrow. So King did not actually intend this march to be for children. He was attending a meeting with several other people in Birmingham and was asking people to stand up with him and to join a protest. And children stood up. Okay, so he was calling on people, and it was the kids who responded. Most people were shocked by this, but they want to allow the kids to participate because they want their freedom just as much as the adults. And so they decided to go through with it, even though there was some, criticism here to allow kids to step up to this challenge. But, I guess some supporters said, well, why do they have anything less or more to lose than the adults? And also, what effect would, the image of children being hauled off to jail have on the watching nation? Like, that would maybe affect the public more to see kids being potentially attacked. It is kind of unfortunate to think that they're kind of being used, though. Not being used, but they're putting themselves at risk for that. So, on the first day of the march, at least 1,000 children and young adults came, and most of them were hauled off to jail. On the second day, even more showed up, and the same on the third day, and eventually you have over 1,000 people stuck in jail. During some of these days, fire hoses and dogs were released on the children, and this is being captured on national media, and so the world is seeing this, the country is seeing this. And because of all the backlash and national media attention that this is getting, white business owners are finally willing to negotiate, because it's hurting their business, and they don't want to be the source of judgment any longer. You know, the Children's March was one of the more effective things to expose people like Bull Connor to the world, and, you know, as a person who he was abusive, you know, he was a bigot, and the world kind of knows now what the justice system looks like in Birmingham. Now, MLK is also going to be arrested during the Children's March. He was let out, and then he'll be arrested for the Children's March again. And Kennedy, who is seeing this, decides, and Kennedy's the president at the time, he decides that he wants to take action, and he calls the governor and orders the release of Martin Luther King. This Children's March really gives MLK a global stage to demand more, and we're going to start seeing Kennedy more actively support civil rights during his presidency. Alright, if you have any questions, please email me, and otherwise I will see you all tomorrow. Alright, y'all have a good day.